This is Ali Abdaal, and like 3 million other people, you may have seen his videos appear on your feed every now and then. Ali's a smart guy, coming top of his class at Cambridge and eventually becoming a doctor. But over the past several years, his YouTube channel has exploded in growth, even bringing in over $4 million in revenue last year. And so he decided to put a pause on his medical career and pursue YouTube full time. And now he makes great content on productivity tips, personal finance, learning, tech, and one of my personal favorites, book reviews. And what I love most about all of his content is that it is perfectly simplistic. So I'm gonna steal his style. Hey friends, it's Brandon from Validation here, and in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down everything Ali does in his content, from his presentation style to the way he speaks, the structure of his content, his editing, his titles and thumbnails, the way he dresses, his backgrounds, basically everything, so we can learn from a super successful creator with a pretty simple style that we could all deploy in our own content and our own shared journeys of becoming better creators. And stick around to the end, because I'm going to be making an entire video in Ali's style using everything we talk about in this video on something as a YouTuber you're gonna find very useful that will help make competition irrelevant. But first, let's start with probably the least important, but the most fun and easiest thing to replicate, Ali's look. Now, Ali's perfectly simplistic video style begins with the look of his content, and it's all about creating a vibe. And the vibe I think he's tending towards is something that's welcoming and very positive and friendly. And you really get that when you look at his content. When I click on an Ali Abdaal video, I know what I'm getting. It's gonna be a nice, bright environment, lots of plans, books. It's gonna be very clean, professional, and minimalistic. And it just makes me feel sort of at home when I'm watching it. It's very inviting to click on his content and watch. So I'm definitely gonna be replicating that in this video. But before we do that, let's check out his outfit, because it's actually kind of important to creating that welcoming vibe. Now, to sum up what Ali wears in his content in one word, I would use relatable. He just wears one color t-shirts or a simple one color hoodie, sometimes a button-up shirt or a denim jacket over a white shirt. All these outfits are very relatable to everyday people. You know, he's not wearing a suit talking down to us. He's wearing just a plain t-shirt, which makes his content so much more engaging and something that I can personally connect with more. And it also just helps kind of create a relaxed vibe, like he's just talking to us as a friend. So it's something we can easily model. Now I'm starting to look a little bit more like Ali. I could also put my glasses on like this, but you'll see there's a reflection from my light in my glasses. So now let's talk about lighting and how Ali does it. So in Ali's newer videos, he uses what's called high key lighting. This is basically where your subject is very well lit. There's a lot of fill light, which means the background is quite bright. There's no harsh shadows on your face. There's not a lot of contrast in the image. And according to this article from Adobe, high key lighting creates brightly lit scenes, which often suggest an upbeat mood and positive message, which is exactly the kind of vibe I get from Ali's videos. And this lighting look can also imply truth and openness, which makes it ideal for interviews and for training videos or tutorials. So then how do we achieve this high key lighting look? Well, first off, we need a large, soft source of light. And there's several ways that we can do this. The first of which is that you can use a powerful, expensive light like an Aperture 120D Mark II, which I have. I think Ali uses the 300D Mark II. And then you put on a softbox attachment, which just makes a light source a lot more softer. The shadows on your face aren't as harsh if we're using direct lighting. The bigger the softbox, the bigger the source of light, the more softer the light is and the softer the shadows are. Now, when Ali does this in his videos, he sets his light up 45 degrees on the side of him, so it gives a sort of nice dynamic look to his image. Now, to avoid dark shadows on this side of my face, you can also add another light on this side, or you can use a white board like this, place it just out of scene so you have a bit of a reflection from this light over here onto the board, which then comes onto my face, creating a nice sort of fill light, giving you that high key lighting look. So to get rid of that nasty glare in your glasses, probably the best thing I've found that you can do is have an anti-reflective coating on them. Unfortunately, my glasses don't have this, so I have to move my light back. I have to raise it up and play around with the angle. And even then, you can still see that nasty reflective glare in my glasses when I turn my head certain ways. Now, if you don't have the budget for a big fancy light, which is totally understandable, filming next to a window can achieve a very similar look because the sun and your window is going to create a nice big soft source of light. Now, to complete this high key light look, you really want to make sure that your background is illuminated well because we don't want a lot of contrast between the subject and the background. So we can do this a couple of ways. First, you can use your natural inside lights, turn on the switch. You can use window light, the sun coming in, that can look really nice. Right now though, it's really windy where I am, so I'm getting a lot of trees moving, which makes the light very dynamic and a little bit distracting, to be honest. So another option we could use is to just get another secondary light, a cheaper light this time obviously, and just point it at your background, make it brighter. And also you can just choose to shoot in front of a lighter scene. So unfortunately, my brick wall behind me is going to provide a lot of contrast no matter what I do, so I'm going to have to change where I'm filming to really match Ali's look. Now, the final thing I've noticed Ali do in a lot of his videos is include practical lighting into his scenes. Things like lamps or decorative lights that really just elevate his shot and make it a little bit more interesting. Now, I actually already do this, including my Aperture MC in the background over there, which just makes the shot a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more interesting. The computer screens behind me too also provide some sort of practical lighting. But speaking of everything back there, now it's time to move on to breaking down his background. So first off, you'll notice that he often films in front of a bright background, which really helps achieve the vibe he's trying to go for. And so to match that vibe, I'm going to swap out this background for a white brick wall. Right, so that's a little bit better. It's kind of matching Ali's vibe a little bit closer. But now let's talk about how he uses his camera and how he frames his shots. And there's a couple of things I've noticed here. The first of which is that Ali takes up most of his frame when he's filming. So he has a little bit of headroom, but basically it's from his waist up. It's not super zoomed in on his face, which creates sometimes an uncomfortable feeling in videos. It's sort of as though you're sitting across from him at a table. And that's important to note because the next thing is he often, 9 times out of 10, sits in front of a desk. This allows him to have a foreground, put some props on there to make the shot look a little bit more interesting, but more importantly, he can lean forward on the desk, which creates again that more welcoming sort of conversational tone as though you're sitting across from him at a coffee shop. Now, my desk is way too big to move in front of me right here, so I'm going to have to improvise. And the solution I came up with is to just use this IKEA shelving unit. Right, so I've got my desk, and to make it look more like Ali's, I've got these fake plants that I got from Amazon, and these are actually the exact same that he uses. It's around $20 for a set of 3. Really good, and they just make the scene look a little bit more interesting, a little bit more welcoming and friendly. I also have the book I'm going to be talking about later on the desk, so I can pick it up, refer to it. And I have this microphone here because I don't have a laptop I can use, but this looks pretty cool anyway. And the best thing is, I can now lean on the desk and talk to you in a much more conversational tone. It's almost like we're sitting in a coffee shop having a conversation. Now, before we move on to fixing up the background, you'll notice that a lot of Ali's videos have a blurry background. And this is achieved by your camera settings, using a low aperture value, which is measured in f-stops, of around 3 or below. Now, this is just something you can do in your camera settings if you have a good camera and you want to have it below 3, which will give you a nice blurry background. Anything above that and the background will be in focus, you will be in focus, and everything will just look flat. So having that nice blurry background creates some contrast, creates some depth, and again, just makes the image look cool. And now we have that out of the way, let's move on to making this background look a little bit less boring. So what do I need to include in my background to make it look like Ali's? Well, according to his Skillshare course, it comes down to the holy trinity of just 3 things: lamps, plants, and bookshelves. And so let's add them in. Now, I also want to mention that I'm going for his newer video vibe. In his older videos, he used to have more of a darker scene and he would have a dual light setup of that classic orange and teal. It looked really cool, but I really do prefer his newer videos vibe. That nice, bright, white setting just makes it much more friendly and a much more welcoming place to come to each day and check out his content. Now, there's one more thing I need to look at if I want to make videos like Ali, and that is having a top-down shot of a desk. Now, you can do this any way you want. I myself have found 2 green screen stands that I've put a bar across, and I have this Manfrotto arm that I've attached hanging down that I can just put my camera onto. And basically all I want to do for these shots is just have a nice clean desk, maybe put one of these fake plants on it, have some pens, some props, the book that I'm going to be talking about, and a notepad that I can draw on, or just a clean surface that I can hold my phone in front of. Now, the main thing I've noticed Ali use this top-down shot for is drawing diagrams and writing out quotes. And this is a great way to easily add visual interest to your videos, and it's something that I myself want to do in the future more. So now I kind of have the Ali look down pat, it's time to move on to the most important thing, his secret sauce, and that is his speaking style. Now, because this topic is so important, I want to make an entire video touching on it later on this channel, but the way Ali communicates to his audience is really appealing to me.
Right, so the average human in a developed country lives to be around 80 years old, which is roughly 4,000 weeks. Now, this poster shows every single week of an average life as one square on this, and then the black ones are the weeks that we have already lived.
It's very conversational in tone. He's always speaking through a smile, and as I said before, he leans on his desk and he uses a lot of hand gestures.
I went back through 4 years worth of podcast listening history, and these are the 20 podcasts that I would say have had a significant impact on my life and on my business.
Which just makes his video and the way he speaks more animated, dynamic, and interesting to listen to, considering his videos are basically just him speaking for 10 to 20 minutes straight. But what I think he does exceptionally well is talking about sophisticated subjects and making them relatable and interesting to a wide audience. And he does this through using personal anecdotes and metaphors. He relates these ideas to his own personal life and experiences, which just adds so much more value to his audience.
Secondly, achieving a goal is only a momentary change.
Sure, I might be able to pluck up the activation energy to bring myself to clean my room, but if I continue my waste man habits and systems that led to the room getting messy in the first place, I'm just going to be left with a messy room again in a few days' time.
Now let's move on to the way he structures his videos, which is again perfectly simplistic. So usually he starts off with an opening statement, then a quick welcome, and then talks exactly about what the video is going to be, what you as the audience are going to get out of it. And then within 20 seconds, he moves on to the first point. And most of his videos are really structured in this simple way: an introduction, and then just point by point, and a conclusion. Very simple, but very effective. Now let's move on to his editing, which is again, pretty simplistic. And although Ali is a Mac user and edits on Final Cut Pro, I know I can do all the same things in Premiere Pro very easily. Now, Ali actually has a Skillshare course on the way he edits his videos. So instead of talking about all that stuff, which would just be cheating, this is what I've observed on top of the material within that course. So if you're interested, definitely go check it out. I highly recommend it. So the first thing I noticed is that his videos are very well paced. He's basically speaking the whole way through, he cuts out all pauses, and to make the video flow a little bit nicer, he also zooms in some clips every now and then, by about 5% or more. Sometimes it's just a straight cut to a zoomed in clip. Sometimes he actually manually zooms in the clip and you see that happen in camera. Next up, depending on the video he's making, he often includes a lot of B-roll, but sometimes very little. Now this B-roll could be anything from just showing the subject of his video, maybe him holding a book or reading a book, or it could also be a top-down view like we talked about before, of him drawing a diagram that just visually shows what he's talking about. These little clips interspersed within his content just make it a little bit more interesting. Now you may have noticed in some of Ali's newer videos, you actually see him in a little bubble while the B-roll's playing behind him. Now this bubble is actually very easy to do in Premiere Pro, and I'm gonna show you how to do it right now. So to do this, all you really need is a PNG image of the shape you want your footage to look like. Could be a square, could be a circle, rounded rectangle like Ali, or even a star. It just needs to have a transparent background. Drag it into your sequence and then apply the track matte effect to the footage you want to cut out. In the drop-down menu, select the layer that your PNG image is on, and then to adjust the crop, just change the size and position of the PNG layer shape, and then you can adjust the size and position of the entire effect by adjusting the main footage file that you're cutting out. Now, Ali also has this groovy glowing line going around his cutout, which looks really cool, and I'm gonna do this in After Effects. All I had to do was get a shape the same size as my cutout, and then animate a stroke going around that, apply a glow effect, and then put it onto my sequence in Premiere Pro, adjust the size and scale, and there we go. Looks pretty much exactly like Ali's, and I really do like the way this looks. Now, one of the things I really enjoy about Ali Abdaal videos are his simple title cards and icon pop-ups. And I know he sources a lot of these from flaticon.com. You just have to use an attribution, so I can source the same icons that he does in his videos. Pretty cool. And I know that he gets a lot of templates for his title cards from Envato, so you could do the same, but I don't want to take the easy route and I don't have the budget for that, so I'm going to make my own using After Effects again. And this is what I came up with, and you've actually been seeing it throughout this entire video. It's very, very easy to do in After Effects once you learn the basics, and it looks really clean. It's minimalistic and just contributes to that overall vibe that Ali is going for in his videos. But more importantly, these also help to break up the content and add another point of interest to his videos, which again are just him sitting behind a desk and talking for 20 minutes. So this is really valuable in my opinion. Now, when it comes to transitions, honestly, Ali keeps it really simple. The only real one I've noticed is this simple RGB color shift transition that he only uses for a couple of frames on each side of the cut. And honestly, he probably uses a template from Envato or another site like that, but I want to take the hard way again and create my own in Premiere Pro. So looking at Ali's video, if we go frame by frame, you can see it's just a simple shift of the RGB colorways for a frame on either side of the cut. It just provides a simple cue that there's going to be a transition and another point of interest in his video. But how do you do this in Premiere Pro? Well, it's actually just a bunch of adjustment layers and the channel mixer effect. And to help me, I found this useful tutorial from Ignis. You should definitely go check it out if you want to achieve the same effect. Very easy to do, but very effective. And after just 10 minutes of working on this, I have now an Ali Abdaal transition. Now, when it comes to adding music to his edits, Ali keeps it really simple. I know he uses Epidemic Sound, and he basically just goes for instrumental beats or, soft piano that plays in the background, very, very quiet. It's so subtle that you barely notice it's there. But again, it just helps create that peaceful, welcoming vibe. Now I can find the exact same sort of tracks on Artlist or audio.com, basically any stock music site, and apply them to this video so I get that same vibe. Now, one thing I've noticed Ali do a lot more of is add sound effects, some of which include a whoosh when things appear on screen, a pop when things just pop up onto the screen like those little icons, a cash sound effect for when he's talking about money, a quick typing sound effect when text appears on screen, and even a highlighting sound effect which applies texture and another point of interest to his title cards. So now I have a good grasp on how he edits his videos, and I went through his entire Skillshare course. It was really, really good, really insightful. Now I think it's time to look at how he markets his videos through titles and thumbnails. And when it comes to these, he continues to apply the perfectly simplistic approach. And when we look at all of these thumbnails from Ali, you can really see that. 9 times out of 10, it's just a simple photograph of Ali with a blurry background. He's smiling, he's back from the camera a bit, so it's not a close-up on his face like a lot of thumbnails do. Again, it's much more relaxed and welcoming. There's not a lot of complicated effects that he applies to his thumbnails. But despite that, to add some flair and another point of interest that captures your attention, he puts on these icons from flaticon.com in a little white circle. I don't know about you, but I really do like the way these thumbnails look. Now, when it comes to his titles, let me read you out a few of his top video titles and see if we can find some common threads. Number 1, 9 passive income ideas, how I make $27,000 per week. How I type really fast, 156 words per minute. Then how I ranked first at Cambridge University, the essay memorization framework, how to invest for beginners, how to study for exams, evidence-based revision tips, 21 life lessons for teenagers, how I manage my time, 10 time management tips, how I remember everything I read, tiny changes, remarkable results, Atomic Habits by James Clear. So when we look at those titles, again, they're very simple. They're often very short, under those 55 characters, so you see the whole title on pretty much any device, and they get to the point. They tell you what the video is, and they focus in on a specific audience and what they want. A lot of his content applies to people who want to be more productive and get more out of life. So even having things like a medical school student at Cambridge, a lot of people aspire to be that smart and that good at school and other things in life. So seeing that in the title really piques your interest and makes you want to click on that video. He also uses a lot of keywords, which again will help with search and discoverability, and he uses a lot of numbered lists, 9 passive income ideas, 10 time management tips. These things are very, very appealing formats that a lot of people just love to watch. And now, taking into account everything we just talked about, I made my very own Ali Abdaal inspired video. Enjoy.